Hey guys, welcome back to the First Methodist Shreveport podcast. I'm here with Lynn Stevens, the Director of Workforce of Goodwill Industries of North Louisiana.
Perfect.
All right.
It's a mouthful.
It is. It is. But I'm glad to be here with you.
Yeah, good to meet you and good to be here today with everybody.
So how did you get to be the Workforce Director?
Yeah, so actually I've only been in town since 2007, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
And so I had a path which started at Providence House, and I helped to run Providence House for about 4 years, and then I moved over to the United Way and helped run the United Way for almost 10 years, and actually was their funder, and we worked on a project together, and just God had a way of moving doors and answering prayers, and he said, you know, this is where you need to be.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up getting to Goodwill. So it's been a good journey.
Nice. And so a Shreveport native or
No, originally
transplant?
from Indiana, and
Okay.
so I'm. They say Yankee, but it's not really Yankee to me. I'm a Midwestern, and so moving to the South, I had to learn to root for LSU because I'm a diehard Notre Dame fan. So sometimes that can be fighting words.
Can't imagine.
But learned now LSU.
Yeah.
I'm purple and gold.
So did you hold on to Notre Dame for a while?
I did several years. I was the lone wolf. My
Okay.
husband and I.
I understand that struggle. I came from Texas, and so University of Texas.
Okay, so
Still haven't given it up. 10
Yeah,
years
so-
in, and still haven't given that up. But yeah, that's awesome. So workforce director.
yeah, it's a mouthful, and really doesn't capture everything I do every day. It's a lot of operational programming. It's the marketing. It's the fundraising, because all of that goes hand in hand. But we actually have a staff of about 350 people. Most people don't
Oh,
understand
wow.
that.
Yeah.
All they really know is the thrift store people. And, when I first said I'm going to work for Goodwill, that's exactly what I got. Why are you going to work for a thrift store? And I'm like, no. There's a mission part of Goodwill. And so we cover all of North Louisiana. So we have offices in Alexandria, Natchitoches, Shreveport, Bossier, Monroe. So we travel a lot. I travel just about 2 days a week
Wow.
to our outlying parishes to manage some of those programs and market and network and do everything I need to do there.
Nice.
So, yeah, it's been an adventure. When I first went to work there, it was super interesting because they basically said, we've done it for, X amount of years, always the same way. And, we want to grow. So what do you need? And so it's been kind of like this ball of Play-Doh I've actually got to play with. And so we went from 9 programs to over 20.
Oh, wow.
So we've really grown. We've grown our rural parishes. We do a lot of programs here in the Shreveport Bossier, but we weren't doing as many in the regional areas. And so we were able to expand some of our territory. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So when you say 9 programs, what is a program?
Yeah, so workforce programs are training and employment placement. That's our mission is about employment.
Okay.
So what you may not know is Goodwills are kind of like little franchises. So there are 155 Goodwill territories that exist in the United States of America. And
That's fewer than I thought there would be.
yeah, so there's actually 4 in this state. So we're the largest territory. New Orleans, Baton Rouge is a territory. Around Lafayette, that's a territory. And then Lake Charles, Beaumont is kind of a territory for our state.
Okay.
But what we all do is we all are focused on employment training and employment placement. It looks different in different parts of the country because every part of the community looks a lot different.
Okay.
So if you're in Texas, it might be a lot more military-based, a lot more veteran-type programs. If you're in New Mexico, it might be more immigration programs. So it just depends on where you're at in the country or what it looks like. They're all independent of each other, so all of us have our own board. We raise our own money. All that money stays here. It's, that misnomer of one big, massive person running this. Not true. It is totally a nonprofit.
Okay.
And so started clear back in the 1900s, believe it or not. And so Edgar James Helm was the man who founded Goodwill. He was actually a Methodist minister.
All right.
He was married at the time, and his goal and his calling, he felt, was to go overseas. And back in those days, they didn't send married missionaries across the ocean. And so they sent him to actually Boston, Massachusetts, and said, here is your calling. Go do good. And he was devastated, really. He didn't know. He just, why God? Why me? What am I supposed to be doing here? And it took him actually a long time, and really it was his wife's encouragement to really work at this church to find his calling. And his calling at that time, you think about ships were coming across the ocean. People were getting off boats for the American dream. And what they were finding was poverty. It wasn't called poverty then, but it was really poverty-like symptoms. They didn't speak the language. They really didn't have a lot of skills. They didn't know what to do. If they came in the middle of winter, they would freeze on the streets. So they would basically get off the boat and walk right up to this church who would feed them and house them. They had a shelter at the day. And so he finally one day says, I just need to give them something.
Yeah.
And so that's what he started doing. He started going to the rich parts of Boston and collecting items. And he would take it to the bottom of the basement. And he would sort it and fix it and do all the stuff he would need to do. And then one day a week he would open it up, and there would be lines miles long of people wanting to, get items. And so he thought about that after he did it about 3 or 4 times, because the people kept trying to pay him. They would try to give him stuff or exchange stuff. And what he thought about, it was dignity. And he kept telling them, no, don't. You keep your money. You need it. But the more he thought about that, is the more he realized he was in over his head. He couldn't do it alone. Him and his wife were 2 people. The church staff was very small, and he needed help. So what he did is he started employing them to help him go gather stuff, fix stuff, and work those events. And that's really how the cycle of Goodwill started.
Wow.
Back in the early 1900s.
That's incredible. And I guess that perspective, it's, you would think it's kind of instinctual because everybody know, or at least Americans know, like the land of opportunity. Whenever America was founded and growing, you think of people coming to America all the time to chase the American dream. But what you said is like absolutely correct, that when they got here, they likely had nothing but the clothes on their back. There weren't hotels that they could go to, or maybe couldn't even afford to go to hotels.
Right.
And so they just showed up and were just here and had to make something happen.
What we learned is they bartered on the ship, because it was almost a month-long ride, basically, over. And so they would exchange stuff they had for other stuff. And so you're right, they really got off with very little. They had pretty much used it to, eat on the ship and take care of their families.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was very interesting. So he created, really, if you think about a recycling movement clear back in the 1900s, way before a social movement began. Way before the green movement. And so it's really been a kind of a thing. His philosophy was a hand up, not a hand out.
Yeah.
And so that is true what we do, and that's probably some of the biggest criticism we get is, we give you all this stuff, why do you sell it? And so it's really, you give it to us, we sell it, but we turn those dollars into workforce programs.
Okay.
And so a program varies by each person coming through our door. We have a main program called Open Placement, and it truly works like an American Job Center. But what we find is the people coming through our doors, when they do a lot of their intake paperwork, it tells us their story. Some of them can't read, some can't write, some have a barrier involved with criminal justice, some are dyslexic, some are handicapped or have a physical disability, some can't hear, some are blind, some just, there's a variety of different barriers that they face.
Yeah.
And it's really challenging if you've not raised in a family that you've ever seen anybody go to work. You may not know how to go to work. And so our job at the Goodwill Job Centers is really to take those folks and really hold their hand and help them get the tools they need to not only get the training and the skills, but then to maintain employment. So it's about, you can get anybody a job. There's jobs everywhere today.
Yeah.
It's maintaining the job that's the hard part. And so that's what we really focus on. And that program really, I look at that data every year, and it really tells me the story about what other type of programs we need. Many years ago, we saw a lot of people that were coming through our doors that didn't have a high school diploma. And so one thing people don't know is we actually have a school at Goodwill on 70th Street where people come every day, and they can get their GED and their high set.
Okay.
And so last year we had 22 people graduate with a high set diploma. That's higher than any other organization in this community.
Wow.
And we partner with Bossier Parish Community College. They send instructors down. And so we don't teach it, but we provide the space for it. And so we have about 70 people enrolled that come.
Wow.
Either to class, or we're doing virtual now because of COVID. It changed a lot of different things. And so it's a very beautiful thing. We know most of them coming through our door only read at about a 4th grade level when they come.
And so when someone buys stuff from Goodwill, that money is going to the programs that you're talking about,
Correct.
the GED, workforce employment at Goodwill, and other things.
Correct. So it really does help pay for our operational costs, but it also goes into workforce programs. We go raise additional funds because it's very costly to run programs. It's a lot of staff-centric because it's a lot of hand-holding. It's a lot of case management is what I call it. We have people that are on food stamps. We have a specific program just for those people to help get them off food stamps.
Yeah.
We have people that are behind on child support. I mean, a lot of people don't know if you're behind, you can go to jail. And so we work with the courts to get them a job and get them the training to what we call a career ladder. So they might be working here, but they need to be working at this level to be able to afford not only their payment, but their arrears. And we've seen great things with that. And the judges love it because they work with us. They know that they can trust us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a whole specific population we work with.
And is that, you said at the beginning that each region kind of has its own service people that they service. So you
Correct.
said Texas, it might be more veterans. New Mexico, it might be more immigrants.
Yeah.
So Louisiana.
So in Alabama, they run a homeless shelter.
Okay.
We don't do that. But for them, they needed a shelter. They didn't have shelters over there. And so they take them basically from that homeless shelter to work every day.
Okay.
So it just looks totally different depending on where you are in the country.
And so who does Louisiana focus on? Or is it different from each location?
It is different. So if you go to my east, to the Monroe area, it's a lot of reentry, and mental health is a huge thing over there. Rural parishes seem to struggle with mental health issues. You go south, and we have a lot of foster care programs. A lot of people don't realize we work with foster care kids. You have to think about somebody who's in foster care. Every time they move homes, they go back 6 months mentally. And so if you're 17, you may be acting at a 14-year-old level if you've been moved around so much. And so they don't have some of the basic skills that you and I would learn from our parents. So we're teaching them, how to grocery shop, how to pay their bills, how to change a tire, how to check the oil, things that they're going to need to know for when they age out of foster care. And they're basically, the day they turn 18, if they don't stay in extended foster care now, they're on their own. And so they go from housed to unhoused very instantly sometimes.
Goodness. And so whenever you say you work with the kids in the foster care system, or do they have a job after they age out of the foster care system?
We
still
help
with
them get
Goodwill?
employment. We help them get the training they need to become employed. That's truly what we focus on every single day.
And I love what you said about not, or giving them a job, but also teaching them how to work.
Right.
Because what you said is definitely true, that if you grew up in a home where you didn't see your parents go to work, you don't understand that the getting a job at 16 as a part-time person build or sets the foundation for you to eventually have like the career
Right.
when you're in your 30s that could actually support you and a family.
Yeah, we have a philosophy: first job, next job, career.
Mm-hmm.
So you're at one of those levels at some point in your life.
Yeah.
You know, you may never had a first job if you've never seen anybody work, or you've had a few jobs and you're at that next job but not quite career level yet.
Mm-hmm.
So let's work on some skills to get you to that career job.
Yeah.
So we actually have some programs that we have specific funding that we can actually help pay to go to school. So we can help get them forklift drivings. We had 13 truck drivers that we helped get truck driving license for last year. I mean, so it just depends on the needs of the individual and their wants. Because if you think about it, you want to go to a job you love, or you want to go to work.
Yeah.
So we always try to do an assessment of what do you really want to do? What's gonna make you want to go to work every day? Because you're not gonna keep going, especially if you think about it. Somebody who has no transportation,
Yeah.
pouring down rain, which right now today at 106 we wish we were having rain. But think about it, if you're riding a bus and you're gonna have to stand in the rain, and it's 6:30 in the morning and it's still dark, what's gonna make you get out of bed and go to work? Something you really like to do.
Yeah. Or
Not-
selling the dream.
Yeah, so we've really talked about what they want to aspire to, because a lot of people may have never had that conversation. Where do you want to go to school? What do you want to do? What do you want to be? They've just never had that conversation.
Yeah. And that seems to be like a real common thread with folks that we've talked to on this podcast, because we've talked to folks from Hope Connections, Providence House, Catholic Charities, and just all these different places. And the common thread seems to be giving people the space to see that there is a future.
Correct.
Because right now, like the working poor, people who are homeless, people who are coming out of being incarcerated, it's just the right now. All they can think about is, how do I survive today? How do I get to tomorrow?
Correct.
There's very limited options for them to have a chance to breathe and say, okay, there is going to be 20 years from now. And what does that look like?
Right.
And how
They can't
do
see
I
20 years because they just can't fathom that.
Yeah, exactly. And so it seems like the thing that seems to help most people is giving them the freedom to breathe in the moment, and then letting them know that they're worthy of a future, and that there is a future that they should pursue for themselves and for their families.
Right.
And so it's great that Goodwill is...
It's a lot of case management. It's a lot of support. I say it's mentoring, even though we don't call it mentoring. I mean, they don't have maybe a father figure in their life, or never have had that parental figure that really has encouraged them. You know, it's to me, it's mentoring. We shadow what, we try to get them in the door as much as possible so they can feel our vibe, because we're all about vibes and, and moods and communication with them.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned that each location or each Goodwill is kind of like a franchise.
Correct.
But it's a nonprofit franchise.
It is. We're totally a 501c3 organization. Pretty much what we raise is what we spend each year. We really don't make money per se. We have an independent board of directors that really cover our entire region. So they help direct the strategic vision. They help fundraise. They meet every month and look at our financials, and we have our audits and all the stuff that every nonprofit should have done, we do. We're also CARF accredited, so that's a very thorough examination where somebody comes in every 3 years and looks at all of our programs, all of our forms. They talk to our clients, our funders, all kinds of people, and really put a rubber stamp to know we're doing exactly what we say we're doing.
Yeah.
And it's kind of unique. A lot of organizations don't do that. We choose to do that. We pay to have that evaluation done to make sure people understand we're doing exactly what we say we're going to do.
And so why would somebody, because, you hear the word franchise and people owning a franchise now, you think like a McDonald's or a
Correct.
Chick-fil-A or something to make money. So why would somebody open a Goodwill?
Yeah, it's more, I say it's like a franchise so people understand it's more based on territories.
Okay.
And so what they tried to do many years ago is really draw a geographic region of what kind of is very similar. And of course, all of North Louisiana is pretty similar, really. If you think about the Monroe area and Shreveport area and the Aleck region, they're all very similar, a lot different than Baton Rouge and New Orleans, and that's a whole different area for that reason. Beaumont and Lake Charles are very similar. And Acadiana kind of is the oddball out. But they kind of function on their own. But if you go north of here, like Texas, Arkansas, that whole state is one region. So they have the entire state. And they're managed out of Little Rock. So it's just every territory looks a little different. I don't know who made it, but they did. We just inherited it.
Yeah. And so is it the Goodwill Corporation, or is it a corporation?
It is an LLC.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a nonprofit corporation, I guess, not an LLC, a corporation. And so, but it's classified, I think, as a nonprofit corporation.
Okay. So is it the corporation that's deciding where to put locations, or is it like individuals choosing to open a Goodwill?
Yeah, so it's very regulated. I hate to say that. So if you said today, I want to open a Goodwill, I would have to tell you to call, or we actually have Goodwill International that kind of protects our branding, protects our store rights, that kind of thing. They actually have great calculations and can tell us where stores will do very, very well, where stores we don't need to put stores. They help us place donation boxes where donation boxes need to be. I mean, it's very, I think AI has a lot to do with it behind the scenes, but they really are our keeper of the clipboard, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's great. So each person...
So even if today I was like, I want to open a store in Ruston.
Yeah.
Because Buc-ee's is coming. Everybody wants to be around that, right?
That is exciting.
It is exciting. We've asked, is that an area that we need to go back to? We used to have a store there many years ago. And they said no at that time, so we closed the store. Now they're reevaluating because of Buc-ee's, so we'll see.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So when, let's say someone did open up a store in Ruston or got approved, would they need to identify a need that they're going to serve with their Goodwill? Or are they going to need to say, we're going to hire...
So they would not probably, if they're in an existing territory, they would have to go under that existing territory.
Okay.
So, and, that's something we would look at, is we would look at the need, not only the retail side of it, but we would look at the needs. What needs are not being addressed there?
Okay. And so you would open it up, and then Goodwill would say, these are the needs that need to be met.
Right.
Okay.
And these are the needs that we can serve at a job center. So there's a retail site, and usually there's a job site.
Okay.
So each of us have job centers as well.
And I guess backtracking a little bit, so here in Shreveport, I know we've got one Goodwill in Shreveport, one...
We have more than one.
We do?
Yeah, we do.
I know there's one on Burt Coons.
Yeah, that's our biggest one.
Okay.
And then there's one over in Shreve Island by the base.
Okay.
And then there's one on 70th Street, which is our outlet market. So, yeah. So
Where at on 70th is that?
It's down what I call in Furniture Row. It's down by Bewley's Furniture.
Okay.
It's in the Cedar Grove neighborhood. That's actually where our administrative offices are as well.
Okay.
Then we have Bossier and we have Houghton.
Okay.
And then we have Alexandria and Pineville. And we have one in Natchitoches. We have one in West Monroe. And then we have job centers located at several of those as well.
Goodness. And you're over...
Just the workforce job centers.
Just the
That's
workforce.
plenty. I have plenty of great people that run the retail division, and they do a great job with that.
Okay. And so the people, I guess going back again, the people at the retail centers are the ones who are being helped by Goodwill, so potentially...
So, yeah, most of what people don't know is, we do community placements with most of our jobs. But there are a few people that we actually use our stores to train them with. Because if you haven't worked in 10 years because you've been locked up, you really probably don't know how to clock in. You don't know how to show up on time. You may not know how to communicate with a supervisor. So we don't want to send them out to the workforce to fail.
Yes.
So sometimes we get a lot of flack for, your people in your store are so rude. And when I explain to them, they haven't worked in 10 years and they're learning to work, they're like, oh, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And so I always say, please give them a little bit of grace. We're probably the only company that loves turnover, because if we've trained them well, we then move them to their next job.
Okay.
And so we get excited about turnover.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I guess in this situation, someone who is, we talked about this a little bit before the podcast started, someone who is maybe coming out of Angola or a correctional facility, they're going to have no credit score because they've been in jail. They're going to have no history of being able to pay bills to even rent a home.
Or they probably have a flag on their license because they were behind on something, or their license is suspended and they owe $700 instantly.
Yeah.
When you're in jail, your child support stops while you're in jail, but the minute you release it starts back up. It doesn't erase your balance. So you may be $100,000 in debt to the state, and you've been away for 10 years, that's going to continue to grow that next day. So instantly, if you're not paying, they're going to put you right back in jail.
That is insane. So if someone goes to jail having had a kid on child support, and let's say they're in jail for 20 years, so the kid's past 18.
So they still owe the state money, so they would still have to pay back that arrears through the child's 18th birthday.
Wow. And that would, I guess, go to the child's mom or...
Yeah, it gets passed through the state and back.
Wow.
And the mom's probably written most of it off, but, sometimes lanyap happens.
Yeah. Goodness gracious. And then, of course, all this on top of having to mark you're a felon on any sort of job applications.
Correct. Yeah. So we teach them, how to answer those tough questions. We tell them, be honest. We work with a lot of companies that are felon friendly. And actually, there's so many companies out there today because the market has changed since COVID. They're really not even asking that question anymore. So it's kind of been beautiful. There are some possession, like teachers, and there's things you have to ask that.
Yeah.
But, as far as manufacturing and things like that, there are not as many asking those tough questions. We kind of identified them. And we've also tried to educate them up, not only on somebody who has a criminal background, but also issues around like riding the bus. Bus is going to break down or be late at some point.
Yeah.
And if you only get 3 strikes at work, they need to know, maybe he needs 5 or 6, and here's why. And so we only try to work with employers that we have really tried to educate up on certain tasks or certain issues.
And do they follow, you mentioned the graduation or like the turnover, do they follow the same perspective as Goodwill in that they're seeking to move these people up in the workforce?
Yeah, some of them will always be at this level. It really depends on the skill of that individual. What a lot of people don't understand about the prison system is a lot of rehabilitative now, and since about 2017, they've actually changed a lot of rules in this state. And it's really been kind of beautiful because now there are more training dollars and training opportunities behind the wall. So when you get out, you actually could have several certifications and walk into a 5-6 figure job, especially if you're doing a welding certificate or you're a truck driver. those are great jobs that they can now learn behind the wall, and they walk out with great opportunities.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just thinking about that from like a company perspective, like that sounds like a great thing to do, to go, like, I don't know, Halliburton's probably not the most liked business in the world, but if you had
Right.
the opportunity to send trainers to a prison to give men the opportunity to learn a skill that when they get out, they could potentially go work for a company like that, then
Yeah, and there's tools now, these VR headsets.
yeah.
We can simulate teaching somebody how to weld and simulate some of these skills that they're going to need to know. So we don't even have to bring some of those companies in. So we can actually teach them skills using these headsets now, or let them explore that. If you ever thought about it, here's what it would be like.
Yeah. And do they get to apply to jobs from prison?
We actually have staff that work at several prisons. They're Goodwill staff that actually work behind the wall teaching job readiness and basically become the connector to one of our job centers. So we know when they're getting out, we know when to expect them at our door, and it really just makes that pipeline go quicker.
Nice. And so I think we have quite a few business owners here at First Methodist. So if they wanted to work with Goodwill,
Just give me a call any day. They may be already working with us, or they may have never thought about it. But they're probably desperate for employees, because
yeah.
it is true that there is really 2 jobs for every 1 person working today.
And so if they wanted to give you a call, what number would that be?
318-629-5980 is my direct number, and so
Okay.
they can find me. They can email me or contact us on the website. It comes right to me.
Okay. I love it. Is there anything...
So an interesting fact.
Okay.
So you don't know this. Well, I've already kind of alluded. It's the First it's not United now, but at the time, First United Methodist Church actually founded Goodwill here locally, 1926, and we actually operated just like they did in Boston, out of the bottom of the church for the first 2 years. And so we did exactly the same thing that Edgar Helms did, and did exactly that. And you guys were part of Goodwill and still are. So we actually have chapels at a lot of our stores.
Okay.
Because we were faith-based up until about the 60s.
Wow.
And so it's kind of we even had a chaplain for a long time at most of the locations.
Goodness.
Yeah. And then our first store was actually right around the corner on Texas Avenue, right next to the very first Southern Maine donut. I'm so glad I didn't work there then. I would be 400 pounds. And so, yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
I love it. And so...
So keep bringing stuff. The stuff is important.
Yeah.
We sort it. I talked a little bit about the outlet. So what happens at a store behind the scenes, I always tell people, come take a tour, because you get to see, we talk about every single program we operate, but we also show you behind the wall and behind the store walls. And it's a very procedural kind of thing. And so everything that gets donated, we use a system called One Touch, where we're really only trying to process something one time. And we decide right then and there, is it sellable? Is it not? That kind of thing. And so what happens is our processors know instantly. And we have a market for people out there that will buy the most obscure things from us. And so all of our stores go on basically a 5-week system. So if you ever buy something and it's got a colored tag, the tag tells us how long it's been on the floor. And so there's sales every week on the stuff that is getting ready to go to the outlet.
Yeah.
We're trying to squeeze as much dollars out of each item as possible, so then we have more dollars to work with.
Yeah.
We actually, after the 5th week, it goes to our outlet store, and we sometimes call it a bin store, because it's everything is thrown into bins, and you buy it pennies on the pound there. You literally get a bucket, and you fill your bucket up, and they weigh it, and that's how you buy your items.
Huh.
And it's kind of a last-ditch effort,
Uh-huh.
where you can shop for things that are getting ready to go. to what we call the salvage departments, because we actually have a salvage department as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have people that will buy bundles of stuff. So if you have ever seen the sad little commercials on TV where somebody's in Haiti and they've got an Adidas shirt on or something like that, that is Goodwill has sold that to that country. And and that's why you see things like that. How did they get all this stuff? I know. It came through a Goodwill in somewhere, some way.
They didn't buy it from Amazon.
Did not buy it from Amazon.
Okay.
We try to throw very little in the garbage. You'd be very surprised what somebody will buy. We have a vendor that will buy just one shoe. So if you think don't donate it because you don't know where the other shoe is, please donate it. We've got a vendor, that's all he buys. And eventually he says the other shoe will show up in another thrift store and he will buy it there as well. It's very interesting.
Wow.
Old T-shirts that are holy, you'll think, oh, that's holy. There's a boat company that actually chips up those T-shirts, and that's what's inside of seat cushions now. So when I say some people will buy the weirdest things, they really, really will.
So y'all, outside of the people who buy stuff just at the retail locations, it can then go to a bin store where you can buy per pound
Correct.
of clothing.
Or items.
Wow. And so then from there,
And from there, it then goes to salvage.
Okay.
And so in salvage, we have people all over the country that buy from us. And so very little, like I said, goes into the trash.
That's great.
Really broken things, things, dangerous things, things that, you wouldn't buy, we wouldn't buy just because batteries, things like that. We can't do that.
Yeah. And taking one more step back, you said, or we talked about the turnover is what y'all enjoy at your stores because that means that someone has moved up.
Correct.
And so how does that work?
Well, it depends on the individual. We test their skills. We have some managers, though, that have been with us for years. But as far as the average cashier or the average person, what we call doing hard goods or soft goods, those are the people that we are using training to teach them how to come to work on time and do their things. And sometimes they say, okay, I'm ready to move on. And they're working with their case manager and they'll say, I think it's time I can apply. And, we'll talk to the manager and say, what do you think? Sometimes they just go get a job on their own. And sometimes we are talking them out of, no, you should probably stay here a little bit longer. And, we still need you to work on a few things.
Yeah.
We use a platform called Skills to Succeed Academy. It's a best practice, soft skill leadership, work readiness kind of platform. It teaches people all kinds of skills, how to interview, how to dress, how to answer the tough questions. Social media presence, that's a big thing. A lot of employers are checking social media today. What to eliminate, what not to have on your page. So there's a lot of tools, and it's very interactive. It's computer-based, and so we use that. We use that at JDC, and we use that with VYJ students. We use it elsewhere, not just at Goodwill, and so we're always pushing that out.
JDC and VYJ.
Yeah.
What are those?
The Juvenile Detention Center.
Okay.
So we have staff that go there and help train the young kids that are getting in trouble.
Yeah.
The ones we read about really in the paper just about every day, the young ones. VYJ is Volunteers for Youth Justice. They do a lot of programming that is comparable to us, but they work with the younger demographics, so kindergarten through like 16, 18. And then we kind of take 16 and up.
Okay.
So we do a lot of similar but different things.
Yeah.
They do a lot around truancy. They'd be really good to talk to.
Nice. And so someone, let's say, comes from the prison system, gets a job as a cashier at Goodwill, and then they don't have to stay in Goodwill.
Do not have to stay at Goodwill.
Okay.
Last year we helped 343 different employers find employees.
Goodness.
So 2,600 people came through our doors and we served them. We helped more than 417 people get jobs. And when I say get jobs, they're making $11, $12 an hour, working almost full-time hours. So
Gosh.
that's what it all boils down to.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people think, oh, you're just hiring, you're putting people in your stores. We do, but we also help a lot of big-time name employers as well.
Okay. I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything I haven't asked or anything that people need to know about Goodwill that we haven't talked about?
Let's see. We do a lot of reentry work in the Shreveport-Bossier market. Probably about 50 to 60% of the people have some kind of criminal justice involvement in their life. You know, it starts as a juvenile and then it kind of morphs. So the days of working with people who don't have anything is becoming far and few between.
Don't have anything in the sense of like a record or?
Yeah, so may have been picked up for a DUI, may have, you know, something, domestic violence. We look at all of those ramifications.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a different population for that. Most people, I think, only think thrift stores. I think that's the biggest thing. That's what people know.
Yeah.
They don't understand the mission side of it. And so, and then we get a lot of flack for, you know, there's one Goodwill and they make lots of money. And we really, all the money we stays here and gets reinvested right back into our dollars here.
Yeah.
And we do more than just disabilities. That's why I think we started, you know, that was our bread and butter for a long time. But, you know, what we found is there's so many more barriers to employment. Every single person has a barrier.
Yeah.
You have a barrier, I have a barrier, everybody has a barrier. It's how you are resilient. Can you get by your barrier to become employed, or does that set you back?
Yeah.
And so that's what we specialize in.
Okay. Nice. And is there anything about the reentry that we haven't talked about?
Ooh, you know, reentry is a hot topic in our community.
And reentry as far as like?
You know, just as far as it's the nightly news. Most people, you know, that's what they think is out there, and it's the people in jail, and they just keep committing crime. And mostly what we find is people go back to jail for a technicality. They don't really they don't go rob a bank again or kill somebody again. I mean, it's really rehabilitation. They're getting behind the wall. It's more the details. And but the youth, that's where we're seeing a lot more, the younger populations. It's very fascinating. It's about social media, honestly.
Really?
So what we find is, you know, they get these guns, and I don't know where they get their guns from, but they're taking pictures and they're posting it on social media. And, you know, so then the next kid down the street gets a gun and has to be a bigger gun, and, you know, and they talk and they bully each other on social media. And so, you know, what we're seeing is the ramifications of crime.
Really?
And being the shootings is a lot of kids, a lot of younger generation. And I hate to say it, is they don't know how to communicate.
Yeah.
They wouldn't sit and have this kind of conversation. No. It's, you know, it's on this social media back and forth until it makes one so angry that I'll get you. I'll just go drive by your house and shoot it up. And so they just don't know how to have what I call a fierce conversation. You may not like what I'm going to say, but let me just tell you anyway. You got to have it.
Yeah. The animosity that people have, the bravery of animosity behind the screen is stunning for adults and kids.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, we wouldn't say a lot of the things that we say online face to face to someone.
Face to face. Yeah. And so, yeah, they don't even call each other. I mean, it's all, you know, posting or texting. It's, you know, that's been a real challenge.
And it could just be misinterpreted. Like, I'm sure you've misinterpreted text the same way I have.
You get an email and you're like, ooh, she sounds really mean today. Like, you know, and it's not meant that way at all, kind of thing. But reentry is really bigger than just what we read and see in the news, basically. we actually at Goodwill run a coalition and have for about 22 years that focuses and brings all of the nonprofits together to talk about reentry issues. You know, reentry is where do they live? You know, it's not just about a job, even though employment is super important, but, you know, sex offender is a big word. You know, there are people behind the wall that cannot get out because they don't have an address. And it's not somebody that's, I'll just say, a pedophile. It's somebody who was 25 that slept with a 16-year-old. They're labeled a sex offender the rest of their life. And, you know, they've done their due diligence, but they're sitting behind the wall.
Yeah.
And, you know, did their time, but yet they can't get out because there's nowhere for them to go.
Really? So they can't be released without an address?
Correct.
So it's not like the movies where you just see somebody walk out of prison.
Correct. If you're a sex offender, no.
Wow.
Now, I will tell you the others. Yeah, at 12:01, and it's my release date. They're like, I'm out of here, and they will open the gate and let them walk down the street. But where does somebody go at 12:01? Yeah, so we have to work with our partners to make sure that they get picked up and they get to someplace safe, because if not, they're only going to get in trouble at 12:01 walking down the North Market Street.
Yeah, absolutely. And so someone who was convicted of a violent crime could get out without an address, but if someone is convicted of a sexual crime,
right,
they have
and
to
there are
have a
different
place to
levels
go.
of sex crime. There's 4 different levels. And so what most people think is, you know, the guy who does really bad things, and we don't want them out, or we want to know where they live. But somebody who made a bad mistake, you know, and we see it. I mean, 18-year-olds sleeping with, I hate to say it, 16-year-olds nowadays because of social media.
Yeah.
I thought she was older. I thought this. I mean, it happens. And they have to go to counseling. They have to, I mean, register in Caddo Parish. It's about $1,600 for a sex offender.
They have to pay
They have to pay
$1,600 to
$1,600
register.
instantly within so many days. So not only do they have to find a place to live, then they have to register. Then they have to go to counseling, which they have to pay for their own counseling. You see where the technicalities add up quickly? And so then they end up.
So it's not even that they commit another crime.
Correct.
It's that they fail to pay what was
fines.
imposed on them when they get out.
And every time they move, they have to repay that.
Every time they move.
They have to re-register.
Wow. So if you move from even Shreveport to Bossier,
You'd have to do it. You move across the street, you have to do it.
and let's say you have a rental home, like your rent went up at your house and you need to move, you have to re-register and pay the 16
Correct.
on top of a
Right.
deposit and
Right.
first month's rent and
Right.
last month's rent.
Right. Yeah, it is challenging. It is the system sometimes is, but a lot of the rules have changed, and we advocate at the state level to really try to make them understand, you know, some of the issues around somebody getting out and all the challenges they face.
Yeah.
We have an amazing program. It's called the Exit 318 program. And it's for people that are what we call high-risk individuals, people that have been in and out of the system probably 6, 8, 10 times. And it's to work with them during those first 6 months to get them housed, to get them employment, to make sure all those hiccups that they have had in the past doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
And she's running like less than 5% recidivism rate, which is phenomenal. In this state, it's like 40-some% usually. I think she only had 1 individual last year that went back to jail.
Wow.
1.
That's incredible.
And she worked with a couple hundred people last year alone. So it does work.
Yeah.
And the rules aren't perfect, but they are what they are, and we will adapt around those and really try to change what we can.
Yeah. And one other question is, how has First Methodist helped?
Yeah, so, you know, it's besides you guys giving a lot of donations, you know, there's a closet or a bucket, I know, under the stairwell here. And And I know there's Sunday, like they have a Goodwill Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of members that actually give. We have an annual campaign every year. We have a couple events. We have had members participate in that. But also, we're trying to get the youth involved now. So
Okay.
we've had the 4th and 5th graders come take a tour, and we've actually taught them about employment and tried to educate them up a little bit about some of the challenges. And we had them clean out their own closets and bring stuff to donate. And so, we told them where it went and why it went to certain things to help educate them up, because I think that is what our community really needs to focus on. It's going to take us 20 years really to probably change some of the societal problems we have. So we really need to educate our youth, because they're our future leaders. They're our future folks that are going to be just like you and I someday.
Yeah.
And so now we're trying to focus on the youth and the teens. So, so there's always projects they can do. We had Herc McRoy. They're very good. They come paint every year. And so there are projects that we need done because, again, we might have 300 employees, but they're spread all over the region. And when I look at things, I think, we need to do. There's things always can be done. It saves us money, and then that money can then go back into mission work.
Good. And I guess on top of what you just said, what can First Methodist do to continue to support Goodwill?
Yeah, so, I have talked to several Sunday school classes. I'd love to come back and talk to a lot more. I think just having conversations like this makes them answer some of the questions they may have. Keep bringing donations.
Yeah.
Household goods. We are always needing household goods and clothing.
Okay. When you say household goods, is that like cleaning supplies or food? Or?
There's 2 different things I can tell you with that. So everything on your bookshelf, that's what we call household items.
Okay.
We call that hard goods. But think about somebody getting out of prison. Think about the day you take your child to college. What all do they need? That's exactly what somebody getting out of prison needs. Toilet paper, paper towels, household cleaning items. They mostly get out with shorts or pants or whatever they were picked up in. So they have very little in a bag usually. And so we're trying to give them everything that they will need to sustain themselves till they get that job. So bus passes are great. For our outlying parishes here, it's free. But shoes, socks, underwear, because you don't want to give them used that. You want everybody to have a little bit of dignity.
And so
those kinds of items we're always looking. We have what we call a restart kit project, where it's basically a laundry basket, and inside it is like 2 towels, 2 washcloths, toilet paper, paper towels, all the stuff that we can give somebody when they're reentering the community. But I also think about our foster kids. The state doesn't give us all the money to operate the program, believe it or not. They say you have to have this program, but they tell us then you have to match it 25%. So it limits what we can do with some of our foster kids. What we try to do is give them all the experiences my kid had. Skating rinks, horseback riding. We try to make it fun as well, because that's how relationships are born.
Yeah.
And then they learn to trust you, then they're going to open up a little bit more. And then they're going to learn a little bit more. And so we're always trying to, buy tickets to here, and so dollars for that kind of thing, or prizes at Christmas. Some of them get no Christmas presents, believe it or not. Our GED kids, they're high set, that's what they call it now. I mean, think about it. All these back-to-school drives happened in our community not just very long ago. We got nothing.
Really?
So when they walk in the door, I have to give them paper, pencils, folders, backpacks. These are the kids that basically are walking from Cedar Grove that really have nothing. And
so to give or to get that stuff into y'all's hands, is it money that needs to be given? Or?
It can be items, it can be money, both.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've had clubs and organizations that have sponsored kits or back to school things or Christmas gifts or whatever. We've had a lot of different things, but I also had people that just write a check and say, this is for your foster care, or this is for your GED program.
Yeah.
So,
And so if people wanted to drop that stuff off, would they go to the drop-off locations? Or?
I would suggest you go to a job center and make sure there's usually a head person, a receptionist at our job center.
Okay.
So we get it to the right pots in the right departments.
Okay.
Because if it goes to the resale store, they're going to say, oh, thanks for the donations, and they might sell it.
Which would be great because it
Which
would
would
help
be great, and we
their
get the money,
department,
but the intent of the donor was probably for it to go somewhere else.
Okay.
So,
All right. Well, that's helpful.
yeah. So, yeah, so anything you want to do, the sky is really the limit. There are always needs.
Yeah. And volunteer opportunities.
Volunteer opportunities, definitely. Things that you can do. I mean, our kids need tutors. They need somebody to care about them. They probably get sick of us caring too much. They probably there's a program I didn't even talk about called Growth Opportunities, and it's for the population that we're hearing about. It's 18 to 24-year-olds, and it's to get them basically a job at a livable wage job. But we really need mentors for those kids, somebody they can call and check on them besides us, to encourage them, write them letters and notes and that kind of thing. They probably never had that in their life.
Yeah.
And really help those individuals get on the right path, because they've already had kind of a hiccup. And so let's make sure that they continue down the right path.
That's great. Well, this has been great for me. Hopefully
Learned a
you too.
lot, didn't you? So much more than a thrift store. And I can
It
say that because
is.
like I said, I was their funder. All I knew was the program we funded.
Yeah.
So until I got involved and really got my hands around it, I was like, I had no idea. Yeah, I mean, it just took me aback of how large it really is and how deep it really touches this community. We're really the only nonprofit that really focuses on workforce and employment.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the nonprofits around here we partner with, they call us and say, hey, I need to send so-and-so over. And we're like, go ahead. Because that's really what we need more of. We need all these nonprofits working together and not siloed. I don't want to create something that already exists. So if I need food, I call Martha at the food bank. If I need this, I'm calling that person.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of times that we don't do that, and we should, because I think it would help stretch the dollars and the resources a lot further.
Yes. And that definitely seems to be where Shreveport has excelled.
We're a very giving community,
yeah.
but think about all the back-to-school drives. How many did you hear about? There was probably 100 or more. Why are we duplicating it?
Yeah.
So let's be smart.
So you're saying it might be better to have one back-to-school drive that everybody gives to, and then that disperses to
Everybody.
Okay.
Yeah. There's got to be a way to do things a little bit different.
Well, hopefully.
And there's, back to school is more than just this time of the year. Come January, all those kids are going to need just as much stuff. I hate to say it. They go home for the Christmas break, and I don't know what happened to my pencils and my paper, and we've ran out of tissues at the school, so you're going to have to restock all that.
Oh, wow. Gosh, all the things you don't think about.
All the things you don't think about.
Well, this has been great. Thank you for coming
You're
to visit
very
with
welcome. The impact of Goodwill is about $9 million last year. That's just the workforce side. That's not the store side. The store side was about 11 million. We collected about 7,400 pounds of stuff that would have went to our landfills. So there's a lot of benefits. And so if you don't really understand still today, why do I give you stuff that you sell it? I would say come take a tour. I love to be tour guide Barbie, come on. People leave there and go, I have no idea. Just like they probably watching today and go, I had no idea.
Yeah. And again, one more time, how can they get in touch with you?
318-629-5980.
All right. and email just in case?
Hop on our website and go to the contact us, and it comes right to me.
Okay.
That's
Perfect.
the easiest way. You don't have to worry about email.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you again
You're
for
welcome.
being here today. And guys, we will see y'all next time.
Appreciate it.